When Tyler Morrison's phone revealed a deadly secret, the students who'd tormented their quiet custodian discovered why James Wilson had endured years of humiliation without fighting back. What they learned would expose a Marine's hidden mission and reveal that their greatest protector had been disguised as their easiest target all along. Tyler Morrison was having the best day of his life. The video of James Wilson had gone viral overnight. 30,000 views of the school janitor slipping on Tyler's spilled soda. His mop bucket crashed across the hallway while students laughed and filmed. The comments were brutal. People called James a loser and worse. Tyler made a compilation video called Wilson's Greatest Fails that was climbing toward 50,000 views. But Tyler had no way of knowing that his moment of triumph was about to trigger events that would expose secrets powerful enough to destroy his entire family and reveal that the man he'd been tormenting was actually one of the most dangerous operatives in American military history. James Wilson pushed his cart through Roosevelt High's hallways. He collected the daily trash left by teenagers. At 55, he moved carefully. He understood that staying invisible meant staying safe. His gray uniform hung loose on his thin frame. His hands showed calluses from years of hard work. Students saw an easy target, a man who cleaned their messes without complaint, someone who took their mockery with quiet acceptance. What they couldn't have imagined was that those same hands had once held weapons that could eliminate targets from over a mile away. When students called him names, James stayed quiet. When they filmed him for laughs, James never complained. When Tyler's group made messes just to watch him clean while recording his shame, James simply picked up his mop and started over. What Tyler Morrison and his crew didn't understand was that James Wilson's patience wasn't weakness, but the most secret cover operation in Marine Corps history. But there was something else they didn't know, something that would soon change everything. The morning routine at Roosevelt High had become simple. Tyler would arrive with his crew. Marcus Chen had straight A's and felt better than everyone. Jessica Walsh joined in to keep her social status. They would find James in the East Wing hallway, usually cleaning lockers or mopping floors. Then the harassment would begin. Tyler would call out to James. His voice carried the kind of cruelty that came from never facing real consequences. He would tell James he missed a spot. Sometimes Tyler dropped trash just to watch the janitor pick it up. James would simply nod and clean whatever Tyler pointed to. His movements were steady and calm. He never showed anger, never raised his voice, never gave them the reaction they wanted. This only encouraged them more. They thought his calm meant he was weak. They had no idea it was the control of someone trained in the deadliest combat techniques known to warfare. But what Tyler Morrison could never have suspected was that his father's political career was built on something far more dangerous than corruption. And James Wilson wasn't just watching Tyler. He was documenting every aspect of a criminal empire that had operated in plain sight for over a decade. The broken phone was about to reveal connections that would shake the foundations of everything Tyler thought he knew about his privileged life. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The truth was that James Wilson didn't exist. The man pushing that mop cart was actually Gunnery Sergeant James Mitchell, Force Reconnaissance Marine, whose official records showed him killed in action during a classified operation in Afghanistan 15 years ago. The staged death had been necessary to create the perfect deep cover identity for a mission that would require years of patient intelligence gathering in plain sight. But what made this mission unlike any other in Marine Corps history was that James wasn't just protecting national security. He was protecting Tyler Morrison from a truth that could destroy him. The Marine Corps had needed James alive for a mission that required the perfect civilian disguise. Roosevelt High School wasn't just another suburban educational facility sitting on 40 acres of manicured grounds in an affluent district. The school's location had been chosen for reasons that had nothing to do with education, to do with what lay hidden in the community surrounding it. What students and faculty didn't realize was that their principal's office meetings often included discussions that would terrify them if they understood what was really being planned. Tyler Morrison's father, Councilman Robert Morrison, wasn't just another local politician making campaign speeches and attending ribbon cuttings. For the past decade, Robert Morrison had been the West Coast's most successful arms trafficking coordinator. It's using his political connections and public respectability to move weapons from military surplus auctions into the hands of criminal organizations across 3 states. His operation had grown so sophisticated that federal agencies had spent years trying to penetrate his network without success. But what they hadn't realized was that Robert Morrison had been preparing his own son to take over the family business. James's mission was elegantly simple in concept, but extraordinarily complex in execution. Monitor Tyler Morrison and document his father's activities through the one vulnerability every criminal has: their family. The position of school custodian provided perfect cover, giving James legitimate access to every area of Roosevelt High School, including the administrative offices, where Tyler often waited for his father during after-hours political meetings that were actually coordination sessions for weapons trafficking operations. The Morrison trafficking network operated with military precision, using Robert Morrison's political position to provide legitimate cover for activities that generated millions of dollars in illegal weapons sales. Federal investigators had identified the operation 3 years earlier, but had been unable to penetrate Morrison's security measures or gather evidence sufficient for prosecution. Morrison was too careful, too well connected, and too paranoid to allow traditional investigative techniques to succeed. That's when the Marine Corps had offered James Mitchell's services for the most unusual mission of his career. James would disappear from military records, assume the identity of a recently deceased drifter named James Wilson, and establish himself as a custodian at Roosevelt High School. His mission parameters were clear: gather intelligence on Robert Morrison's operation through surveillance of his son while maintaining perfect cover for as long as necessary to build a prosecution case. James had spent 9 years perfecting his custodial cover while gathering intelligence that would eventually dismantle Robert Morrison's operation. His position gave him legitimate access to every area of the school, including the administrative offices where Tyler often waited for his father during after-hours political meetings. But James's greatest challenge wasn't maintaining his cover or gathering evidence. The real test was enduring Tyler's daily cruelty without breaking character or compromising his mission. Tyler Morrison led a group of seniors who had made tormenting the quiet custodian their favorite entertainment, but they had no idea their victim possessed skills that could neutralize armed threats in ways they couldn't imagine. Marcus Chen used his academic achievements to justify treating support staff as inferior, never realizing he was antagonizing someone who had graduated from advanced military intelligence programs. Jessica Walsh participated to maintain her social status among the popular crowd, unaware she was mocking a decorated combat veteran. The psychological warfare Tyler's group waged against James was sophisticated for teenagers. They would create deliberate messes just to watch him clean them up while they filmed his humiliation. They posted videos with titles like "Wilson's Greatest Fails" and encouraged other students to participate in the harassment. They would corner him in empty hallways to deliver verbal abuse, timing their attacks for maximum psychological impact. James endured years of calculated humiliation because his mission depended on Tyler never suspecting that the pathetic janitor was actually documenting every aspect of his privileged life. When Tyler filmed James being humiliated, he was unknowingly providing cover for surveillance operations that federal prosecutors would eventually use to build an airtight case against his father. Every cruel video, every moment of recorded mockery, every instance of documented harassment was actually providing James with opportunities to observe Tyler's behavior patterns and gather intelligence on his family's activities. The irony was that Tyler's cruelty made James's cover more convincing. Federal investigators monitoring the operation through encrypted channels would watch Tyler's viral videos and see exactly what they needed to see: a broken-down custodian who posed no threat to anyone and commanded no respect from the community around him. The perfect cover for a Marine intelligence officer conducting the most sensitive surveillance operation on the West Coast. But Tyler Morrison wasn't just the spoiled son of a criminal. Unknown to James, Tyler had been actively participating in his father's weapons trafficking operation for over 2 years. What federal investigators had assumed was a teenager living in ignorance of his father's crimes was actually a junior partner in a conspiracy that had grown far more sophisticated than anyone realized. Tyler's harassment of James Wilson wasn't just teenage cruelty. It was operational security designed to maintain distance from anyone who might observe activities that could compromise his father's network. The videos, the public humiliation, the constant documented abuse were all designed to establish Tyler as a typical privileged teenager, rather than someone capable of coordinating complex criminal operations. The morning that changed everything started like any other day at Roosevelt High School. Tyler arrived early for a student council meeting, his expensive clothes and confident swagger marking him as someone accustomed to getting his way. He found James in the main hallway, mopping floors before the building filled with students and faculty. "Hey, Wilson," Tyler called out, pulling out his phone to record another humiliation session. "Bet you can't wait to see my latest video. It's already got 40,000 views." He moved closer, his phone camera focused on James's resigned expression. "You're famous, man. The whole internet thinks you're a complete joke." But that Tuesday morning, everything changed when Tyler's phone slipped from his pocket during another harassment session. The device shattered on the hallway floor, its screen spiderwebbing across what Tyler thought was just another cruel video. James knelt to help collect the pieces, his trained eyes immediately recognizing the secure messaging app that should never exist on a teenager's phone. The broken screen revealed fragments of encrypted communications that made James's blood run cold. Tyler Morrison wasn't just filming harassment videos on his phone. He was using military-grade encrypted communication software to coordinate his father's weapons shipments. The 17-year-old wasn't just the son of a criminal. He was an active participant in trafficking operations that had moved over $3 million in illegal weapons during the past 6 months. James's assessment was immediate and professional, as he helped Tyler gather the phone fragments. His years of intelligence training allowed him to memorize crucial details from the broken screen before Tyler could reassemble the device. Communication logs showed scheduled transfers, client coordination, and payment confirmations that proved the Morrison family operation was far more sophisticated than federal investigators had realized. The broken phone revealed that Tyler's role in his father's operation was far from passive. He was coordinating security communications, managing client relationships, and serving as a liaison between his father's political network and the criminal organizations purchasing illegal weapons. The teenager who spent his days tormenting a school custodian was spending his evenings facilitating transactions that put military-grade weapons into the hands of gangs across the Pacific Northwest. More disturbing was what James saw in Tyler's message history. The Morrison trafficking network wasn't just selling surplus weapons from military auctions. They were diverting current military shipments through corrupted logistics networks. Tyler was coordinating with personnel at 3 different military bases to redirect weapons that were supposed to be delivered to legitimate military units. James realized that Tyler's broken phone had exposed an operation that went far beyond simple weapons trafficking. The Morrison network was essentially stealing weapons from the United States military and selling them to criminal organizations that would use them against American citizens. The scope of the operation made it a national security threat of the highest order. But the most immediate concern was what James discovered about the timing of current operations. The broken phone revealed that a major weapons transfer was scheduled for that very evening, using Roosevelt High School's parking lot as the exchange point during a school board meeting. Tyler's role was coordinating security communications to ensure his father's buyers could complete their transactions without interference from law enforcement. The scheduled transfer would put enough illegal weapons on the street to arm several criminal organizations with military-grade equipment. James realized that Tyler's broken phone had given him actionable intelligence that could prevent a massive weapons transfer, but only if he acted immediately and risked compromising 9 years of careful undercover work. James made a decision that violated every protocol of deep cover operations. He would have to reveal his true identity to Tyler Morrison and convince him to cooperate with federal authorities. The alternative was watching a weapons transfer that would result in civilian casualties when those illegal weapons reached the streets. After school, James approached Tyler in the empty hallway where their daily confrontations usually occurred. But this time, James spoke with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions, his voice carrying undertones of command that Tyler had never heard from the pathetic custodian he'd spent years tormenting. Tyler was stunned when the pathetic custodian he'd tormented for years addressed him with calm precision, explaining exactly what his broken phone had revealed and what those discoveries meant for his future. James told Tyler that his father's operation was under federal investigation, that arrests were imminent, and that Tyler's participation made him a criminal defendant rather than an innocent victim. James then said that Tyler needed to understand his situation very clearly, his voice carrying the authoritative tone of someone who had briefed military commanders on combat operations. He explained that Tyler's encrypted communications placed him at the center of a weapons trafficking conspiracy that carried mandatory minimum sentences measured in decades. James revealed that the federal government had been building a case against Tyler's father's operation for 3 years, and Tyler's phone had just provided the final evidence they needed for prosecution. Tyler Morrison's world collapsed as James Wilson revealed knowledge that should have been impossible for a school custodian to possess. When James demonstrated familiarity with military communications protocols, federal investigation procedures, and weapons trafficking statutes that belonged in war zones rather than high school hallways, Tyler understood he'd been attacking someone whose true capabilities were beyond his imagination. Tyler whispered, asking who James really was, backing away from the man he'd spent years treating as a victim. The confidence that had defined his entire high school experience evaporated as he realized he'd been wrong about everything he thought he understood about power and control. James could have continued his cover, could have pretended Tyler's discovery was a lucky guess. But with weapons transfers scheduled to begin in just hours, there wasn't time for subtlety or gradual revelation. Tyler needed to understand the full scope of his situation immediately if there was any chance of preventing the evening's operation. James then revealed that his name was Gunnery Sergeant James Mitchell, Force Reconnaissance, United States Marine Corps, his posture shifting subtly to reflect his true military bearing. He explained that he'd been conducting surveillance on Tyler's father's trafficking network for 9 years while maintaining his cover as a school custodian. James told Tyler that his broken phone had just exposed evidence that would be used to prosecute Tyler's entire family organization under federal racketeering statutes. The transformation was immediate and complete. Tyler was no longer looking at the submissive custodian he'd spent years tormenting. James Mitchell stood before him as a trained military professional whose calm competence radiated the kind of authority that Tyler had never encountered. The Marine who had endured years of humiliation without breaking character was finally revealing the discipline and training that had made his cover so convincing. Tyler's mind raced through years of interactions, suddenly understanding that every moment of cruelty he'd inflicted had been absorbed by someone who possessed the skills to respond with deadly force but had chosen restraint instead. The pathetic victim of his harassment videos was actually a decorated combat veteran who had been protecting him from consequences he couldn't imagine. The weapons transfer scheduled for tonight will put military-grade equipment into the hands of criminal organizations that will use them against innocent civilians, James continued, his voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing tactical operations. Your role in coordinating security communications makes you a co-conspirator in operations that federal prosecutors will characterize as domestic terrorism. James offered Tyler a choice that would define the rest of his life: cooperate with federal authorities by providing evidence against his father's operation, or face prosecution as an adult defendant in a weapons trafficking conspiracy that carried mandatory minimum sentences of 25 years to life in federal prison. Tyler's decision revealed character that his years of bullying had concealed. When faced with protecting his father's criminal empire or accepting responsibility for his own actions, Tyler chose to cooperate with authorities whose investigation would dismantle the Morrison trafficking network completely. But his cooperation came with a condition that surprised even James Mitchell. "I want to help you stop tonight's transfer," Tyler said, his voice shaking but determined. "Those weapons you're talking about, I know where some of them end up. Kids in my neighborhood, kids I went to elementary school with. If those weapons get sold tonight, people I know could die." The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Tyler's involvement in his father's operation and the psychological burden he'd been carrying for years. Tyler explained that his harassment of James Wilson had been partly motivated by guilt over his own criminal activities and self-loathing over his inability to extricate himself from his father's network. The cruelty he'd shown James was displaced anger at his own situation. James realized that Tyler's cooperation could provide intelligence that would save lives immediately, while supporting prosecutions that would prevent future trafficking operations. But working with Tyler also meant risking exposure of his own cover and potentially compromising other ongoing federal investigations. The decision to trust Tyler Morrison required James to set aside years of justified anger over the humiliation he'd endured and focus instead on the mission that had brought him to Roosevelt High School. Tyler's information about security protocols, client identities, and weapons storage locations would be crucial for federal agents planning to intercept the evening's transaction. James contacted his federal handlers using emergency protocols he'd hoped never to use, explaining that his cover was blown, but that he'd gained a cooperating witness whose intelligence could prevent a major weapons transfer scheduled for that evening. The response was immediate. Federal agents would coordinate with Tyler's cooperation to conduct arrests during the transaction itself. The arrest operation took place during the school board meeting, just as Tyler's father was completing what he believed would be his most profitable weapons transfer. Federal agents, coordinated by James's intelligence, surrounded the parking lot transaction, capturing buyers, sellers, and evidence that would support prosecutions across multiple states. Robert Morrison's arrest made national news as investigators revealed the scope of a trafficking operation that had operated for over a decade using political connections and family involvement to avoid detection. The weapons seized during the arrest included military-grade rifles, explosives, and communications equipment that had been diverted from legitimate military shipments through corrupted logistics networks. Tyler Morrison became a cooperating witness whose testimony would ensure his father's conviction while demonstrating his own commitment to making amends for his participation in the trafficking network. His cooperation provided intelligence that led to arrests of corrupt military personnel, political figures, and criminal organization leaders across 3 states. But Tyler's most important contribution was his willingness to testify about the psychological manipulation his father had used to involve him in criminal activities from a young age. Tyler's testimony revealed how Robert Morrison had gradually introduced his son to illegal activities, using family loyalty and financial incentives to ensure Tyler's participation and silence. James Wilson's cover was permanently blown when federal investigators acknowledged his crucial role in Operation Clean Slate, the investigation that dismantled the Morrison trafficking network. His 9 years of enduring humiliation while gathering intelligence had produced one of the most successful domestic weapons trafficking prosecutions in federal history. The media coverage of James's true identity sparked national conversations about the sacrifices made by undercover operatives and the sophisticated methods used by federal agencies to penetrate criminal organizations. James Mitchell's willingness to endure years of abuse while maintaining his cover became a case study in operational discipline and mission commitment. Tyler Morrison approached James after the arrest operation, but words failed him when he tried to apologize for years of cruelty directed at someone who had been protecting him from consequences he couldn't understand. Tyler had learned that heroism often disguises itself as vulnerability, and that the people we dismiss as powerless might be the very ones working to protect us from our own worst impulses. James's transformation from school custodian to federal witness marked the end of a cover operation that had required extraordinary personal sacrifice in service of national security. But his willingness to risk everything to give Tyler Morrison a chance at redemption revealed the true measure of a Marine whose commitment to protecting others extended even to those who had tormented him. The students who had spent years mocking James Wilson would carry the knowledge of his sacrifice for the rest of their lives. They learned that strength isn't measured by the ability to hurt others, but by the willingness to protect them, even when they don't deserve protection and can't understand the sacrifice being made on their behalf. Tyler Morrison's transformation from privileged bully to federal witness demonstrated that redemption requires courage to confront our worst decisions and commitment to making amends for the harm we've caused. His father's imprisonment would serve as a reminder that criminal success is always temporary, but the choice to do what's right can last forever. This incredible story required extensive research to ensure accuracy in its federal investigation and weapons trafficking details. If you enjoyed discovering the truth behind James Wilson's hidden mission, make sure to subscribe to Untold Legend Stories for more amazing tales of ordinary people protecting extraordinary secrets. Hit that notification bell and let us know in the comments what you thought of this remarkable revelation. We publish new stories every day, and tomorrow's tale will show you that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we never think to thank. Your support means everything to us.